You may become part of the show by calling 503-902-1176. Now, tonight, we are going to talk about like some adventure books that are based upon real life and also about why it is that kids today grew up way slower than the kids from my generation and before. So, for instance, this here is a book called The Dove by Robin Lee Graham. It's an adventure story, and Robin Lee Graham was not necessarily the author. This other guy, Derek Gill, was the journalist who wrote the novel, or the person who wrote the novel based upon Robin Lee Graham's journal entries and diary entries. And in this book, The Dove, Robin Lee Graham departs. He at the time that this book was first written, Robin Lee Graham was the youngest person to make a solo trip sailing around the world. And Robin Lee Graham sailed. Left out from Honolulu, and it took him like 5 years. At the age of 16 years of age, a solo trip. He finished his high school via correspondence on the trip. He took with him two cats and provisions, and then he set out. I think his father did fund the trip. His father was an architect, and his father funded the trip, and then he set out around the world. And then along the way, I think in his first stops somewhere in the South Pacific, in the Philippine island chain, in that region, he met a woman, and they kind of, and so he was 16, and I think she was like a year older, like 17 or 18, and she was actually traveling around the world and going into different places, and she was working her way around the world. And so they met, they fell in love, and they had this romance that goes on, and they got married like in South Africa, like 4 or 5 years later, like when he was like, I think he was um, underage. I mean, I think they had to get. It was a place where they were. He was under 21 when they got married, but 16, actually, maybe 18 or 19, or there was something about it where they, but they got married young, and to my knowledge, they're still married. Robin Lee Graham settled in Colorado, I believe, and let's see, when did they? But the thing about this story that is interesting. There's a lot of things about this story is interesting. But one of the things that's really interesting is that people born in my generation and older or older generations grew up faster. And so if you listening in have some ideas on why it is that people grew up faster, you can welcome to be part of the show. You can call in. I have this phone here. There's a number that's the number. It's in the chat. You can call and you can be part of the show, and your voice will be picked up here. We can talk for a minute or two, and then you can be on your way, or you can just come into the chat with your ideas about why it is you think that people who are under the age of 30 or 40 in today's world, how come they weren't ready to take on the responsibilities of life at age 18 or at younger ages. And from my experience and what I'm kind of thinking of why people in my generation, why we were like ready to get married at 18. And some of us got married at 16. I had people in my class who, when they graduated when they graduated from high school, they had two children already, and they, I don't know that they, I think they tried marriage. Some of them, I think some of them, like me, or they ended up not being married. But a lot of people, they tried marriage, or they had children young. I know that one of my classmates wanted to have children as soon as possible because he had older parents and wanted to be he wanted to be grandparents at a younger age, and so he was, I think he had his got married. He went into the service. I think he went into the Navy, and after he'd done his 4 or 6 year hitch in the Navy, he got out. I think he got married before that time, but he was married by the time the 5 year class reunion came around, and I think they had children on the way. And so, in a person at a 5 year class reunion, they are generally like 22 to 23 years of age. And so, you know, half my class, there was 35 people in my class, and half of them were married by the 5 year class reunion. Married by the 5 year class reunion. Most of them, a lot of people got married, between, um, they got married when they were still 18. They just graduated from high school and they got married. And why it is that people, or why do you think it is that people today can't handle that responsibility of adulthood at 18, at 16, at 17? I mean, I look at my grandma, my mother's, my father's mother. I think she was born in 1906, and she at 6, it was, I think it was 8 years of age, responsible for a younger sister, took a transatlantic trip from Sweden to New York alone without adult supervision. Their parents had immigrated from Sweden to the United States. They went from Sweden to New York to Chicago, and they got jobs. And they came to America to get a divorce. My that great grandfather Olaf, I'd never met him. I mean, of course, I never met him. He died a long time ago. But I think his family had money. I think it was an arranged marriage, and it was set up so that the money stayed in the family. So I think they may have been like cousins. It was like a cousin, like a second cousins or something like that. Cousin marriages. That was, for wealth purposes. They got married for wealth purposes, and I think that he owned a butcher shop. His family owned a butcher shop, and then my grandmother, my great grandmother, she was a fortune teller, by the way. She read tea leaves, and I believe playing cards. I thought that she was a tarot reader, but no, she was a fortune teller, nevertheless. And I get kind of that from that ability to read fortunes or whatnot from my great grandmother. But they came to the United States, and they didn't part company until they had brought, I think they brought 4 of their 6 children over. And but as the story was, that my grandmother, they were send a message, a letter from Sweden over to America, where my great grandmother was working. My grandmother took a little piece of paper and slipped it into the envelope, and it says, "Mommy, bring me to you. Mommy, bring me to you. Mommy, I want to go be with you." And that, of course, it broke my great grandmother's heart. And the person that she was working as a maid for, the what, immigrant labor, what immigrant labor, that person paid for their fare to come over, paid for their fare to come over, and they did. And so they came on a transatlantic trip by boat, alone. Two of these sisters at the age of 8 and 6, alone. Now, of course, there were adults, other adults in there that kept charge of them, maybe even like second and third cousins, people who were also in these waves of immigration coming from Sweden to the United States in the that was in like the 19 teens or something like that. And so there was, in a sense, that younger people could somehow handle responsibilities 150 years ago, 100 years ago, 50 years ago better than they can today. Now, I started working in the family business when I was 8 myself. And that was not real. It wasn't real work. It was more like my dad had a business and a lumber mill in the Oregon coastal mountains, and they in the 70s, during when he was at doing the mill on Saturdays and Sundays, he did the mill writing, fixing all the machines and getting everything ready for Monday when Monday started. And so Sunday afternoons after church, my mother would drop me off at the mill, and I would just go hang out with my dad. But after a while, Dad kind of like, okay, maybe got tired of this or whatever. My dad um, put a shovel in my hands and say, "Hey, Bill, dig out that conveyor," because it was usually at that time on Sunday it was at the chipper, and the chipper took logs and slabs and pieces, and it ground it up into wood chips, and the wood chips were around anywhere between sizes like that to sizes like that. So you could take a log that was like I think that it could take a log that was like 15 inches around and just grind it up, and it ground up the logs, ground it up, and and I when I when at that time of the day, Mom would drop me off after, maybe she would bring Dad a lunch, and then or whatever, and then and Dad would I would just watch him fix the machines, or at this time he was sharpening the chipper knives, and they would pull the chipper knives off, and he would grind the knife edge down, and then there would be like some like a lead or some kind of uh, a wedge that was in there that kept on. They had to keep on. I can't remember the material it was that he melted in there, so it would be it'd be perfect, and that would be so that those knives would be in the chipper for the next week, and he'd be installing those knives, and I would just watch my dad work. But then but you see that these conveyors. I think at that time it was a shake. That was the earlier version. It was like a belt driven, but then the belt driven one was changed to a shaker, and so a vibrating conveyor. The vibrations moved the wood chips into the chipper. And but like in the early days, they had a chipper man, and that chipper man was on a tether, so they didn't get sucked into the chipper, which stuff like this happened. You didn't have safety regulations at work, and so in the past, people died on the job all the time, and my grandfather, my mom's father, worked in the woods as a surveyor, and worked in the woods doing logging and land and stuff like that. And it was common for it was common for three people, two or three people to die a day out in the woods, die on the job because of usually with logging it was the choker setters, and the choker setters they had like a yarder, and there was a donkey. Welcome Rick Sticks. And they would haul that with the yarder and the high wire. They use these high wires, these cables, and they would look. They would the they had the logs on the ground, and the choker setter would set the choker around the log, and then they'd get out of the way. But occasionally, things went wrong, and those logs they spun out of control, or those chokers broke. And then if you happened to be there, bam, that's it. You'd be lucky if you walked out of the woods alive. If you got hit by a tree that was like a down, a fallen tree that was like what 150 feet long, with some of these old growth trees that they were logging in the 30s, 1930s, and 1940s, and the 1950s. So I think my grandfather got he had some. Oh, that's right. He had a bowel obstruction, and then they took a foot out of his bowel, and that kind of stopped. He wasn't able to work in the woods after that again, because that's where all the money was in this area. And so, anyways, in the past, when you were younger, you had more responsibility. So here I am. I'm 8 years old, and Dad hands me a shovel, and I'm shoveling sawdust or whatever. And I probably didn't do it very well because you're 8 years old. You're just a kid. And but responsibilities and things like started young, and I think it was like 9 or 10 is when during the summers when school was out, that the strawberry bus would come by at like 5 o'clock in the morning, and they would take all the kids in the neighborhood. They would go drive around, and they would take the kids and the kids out to the strawberry patch to go pick strawberries. Now, granted, you're you didn't really make very much money. I hated picking berries. I still hate picking berries today, based upon that experience of picking berries when you're like 8, 9, or 9 or 10 or 11 or something like that. But that's how. But those types of situations is how it is that people grow up faster. And so I have my buddy. His kid is young. I think a teenager in high school, and they started having kids late. And I think and a lot of it is that because we talk about this, kids today don't have any opportunities. They don't have opportunities to be around, older other adults other than their family. And so some of the things that help grow people up is work. Work is one of the main ways that it's an opportunity, and it's part of your education too, because you can have an intellectual component to education, but you also need to know how to work a job. And part of working a job is learning how to do something that's extremely boring, and sticking to doing boring jobs. And I've had my share of boring jobs, because every single job you have eventually gets boring after a while. You can only saw so much lumber, work an edger, or work a resaw, or work a trim saw. You can only do that so many times before it gets really, really boring. And being able to stay stay motivated and do that job day in, day out for years on end, that ability to do mind numbing boredom begins when you're young. And so being in a situation that instead of, you are on your TikTok and you're scrolling through and you're looking through stuff like that, that doesn't that doesn't foster the ability to do manufacturing work, the ability to do jobs that are boring. And because most of jobs are boring. Most jobs in the United States, most jobs around the world, most jobs everywhere are boring. You're a cog in a machine. You're doing machine things. I think probably the most exciting job I ever had in my life was like waiting tables and bartending. And I got that, and I learned bartending when I was 50 years old. I learned how to wait tables when I was 50 years old. I was really good at it, but where I wasn't good at was I have vertigo, and I had trouble carrying the tray. And if it was heavy glasses, I didn't have the ability to do that. But I'm kind of getting off track here because I wanted to talk about. We were talking about this story, the dove, where this kid and he started out at 1965. He was 16 years old, and he began a solo trip around the world. And I guess he started from San Pedro, California, in a 24-foot long boat, and 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 so it took him, I think, 5 years, 6 years. So he was like 21 or 22 when he finished the trip. But along the way, he got married, and but he was 16 years of age. Robin Lee Graham, that's the guy's name. And this, I don't think that this book is still in print anymore. But if you can find this book, I really recommend you to read it because it's actually an amazing story. Grant, now there are the parts of the story that he does become like a born again. He becomes a born again Christian sometime along the way. But if you're into that, here's a picture of his wife there. That's the girl. Some pictures of in this book, and that's Robin on the boat when he's Virgin Gouda Sound on a lunch break, and then just young. And I'm just thinking because of I run across, occasionally you run across young people today, people who are this age, and they are incapable of doing adult things. So tarot oracle for the soul. So you wanted to go around the world. Yeah. So do you want to try the phone number out, Sarah, to see if it works? It's right in the chat. So let me see. I got my thing. Talk to me. Be part of the show at 503-902-1176. 503-902-1176. Call and be part of the show. And so since you, Sarah, I do know we talked about this once before about growing up and people like that and how hard it was to grow up. Yes, I went on the regular app rather than with the StreamYard, the free version. You have 20 hours of streaming time, and so I decided that when I was going to go out on this with the telephone, I will be going out using the YouTube feature. And so yeah, yeah. No, there was no one on yet. But so as I was talking, but there was something else I found while I found that book. Is this here is a journal. It's a rewritten journal written by a Lucy Minor Bosworth. And Bosworth this is my family name as it goes back to the Mayflower, John Howland. John Howland became they and his wife Elizabeth Tilley, and then their daughter Hannah. That's my Hannah is my link that goes back to the Mayflower. But in this is an accounting of how some of my family moved from Ohio to Oregon, and there was a part of my family that came. So you had an ancestors on the Mayflower too. Yeah, we probably are related. If it's John Howland, we're pretty, because see, John Howland and Elizabeth Tilley had like 11 or 13 children, and all of them survived. All of their children survived, which was a rarity, because I think like in the olden days, I mean, prior to vaccines and modern medicine, about 25% of your children never made it to be 6 years of age. I mean, it was like that was really kind of common to to lose about, if you lose one out of every four children. And so yeah, so my 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 Mayflower parents were John Howland and Elizabeth Tilley, and their children were, they had a lot. I don't know. I only know the one that the child, the Hannah. Hannah is my it was the first one that was born on continental America. John Howland and Elizabeth Tilley were indentured servants of John Carver, who was the financier of the Mayflower Compact, leaving out of Denmark, and they arrived here in 1621. Yeah, 1621. And so this is of one of my. She's probably more like an aunt. Lucy Minor Bosworth was like one of my grandmother's. My grandmother's like aunts or something like that. I think that's what the relationship was. It wasn't like a direct relative, but it was fairly direct, a fairly direct relative. And this has an accounting of their journey from Ohio to Oregon City, but it was by train. I'm guessing it was by train until like Southern California, and then from Southern California they took a covered wagon. It was like from Pescadero, California to Oregon, and that was their trip from 1882. And this has an accounting of how much they spent on that journey, which was from May 8th to where they finished the journey in June 14th. So it was like a little over a month. It took a little over a month by a covered wagon to go from Pescadero, California, up to Roseburg, Oregon, and I thought they ended up in Oregon City because then they went from a Cottage Grove to Portland, and then because he had the person who made the trip, their husband had a job offer. Well, they came for a job at Pacific University in Pacific University in Forest Grove, and he was like as like a pastor or something like that, because I have a long line in my family, a long line of religious professionals, and on that Mayflower line of people, because well, of course, yeah, the Pilgrims, they okay. Now let me see if I can get this thing to work. Let's see, does this thing work? Oh man, it looks like it's not working. So I don't have it working yet. Hmm. So it needs to go through. I was hoping that it would go through here, route it. Oh, wait. Here it is. Let's see if we can call back. I guess we can you caller, can you please call back, please? And I want to get it from this device rather than from this other device. Because I didn't that didn't work out. Just try call back again, please. Or maybe I can call back. So this is I should have tested this out before we. Hello, hello.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
I got you here. Are you here? No. I guess I should have. Is this working?
Now it's working.
Now it's working. So turn down the volume on the YouTube on your side, so we don't get the echo.
Okay. Oh, okay.
All right, we did it. I did it. The first caller, and this is my public phone number for it's a Google Voice number, and on the line I have a caller from Arizona, and she has been on this show before, and so we have Arizona, and so are you at least 18 years of age?
Yes, Bill.
Well, quickly, quick. What year were you born?
I don't want to answer that, Bill.
Okay, you don't have to. Okay, you are as long as it's like as long as you were born before 2008, you can be on the show as a caller.
You know I'm old.
Okay, all right. I got it. I know. And let's see. I'm hoping that this is working because you are right by my microphone, and I can hear you, and we can have a conversation together, and it should be going out over the airwaves, and we'll find out. Let me see if I can use that clippy function here to clip a. Do I have that? We'll create a highlight. Yeah. So we'll just talk along. And so, is it still snowing there in Arizona?
Well, in New Mexico, no.
Oh,
Our snow is finally almost all melted.
it's all melted. Okay, that's good. All melted.
Finally, after, let's see. Yeah, it took like 6 days, but it's gone.
But you didn't like lose your you didn't lose any of your utilities or anything during the process.
No, no utilities were lost. Our pipes froze for like 2 nights. It got to -1, which is really, really cold for here. And, but other than that, it was fine.
-1. You mean like it's 32 degrees being freezing, and it was 33 degrees less
Negative,
than that?
yeah, it was -1 degrees, and then it was 0, and then it was 1 degree overnight, 3 nights in a row. So our pipes froze, but so luckily it's warming up again, so that's good.
Yeah. So now I know that you're way younger than I am, and then we had this conversation once before, about our, whether 18-year-olds are old enough to get married, but when I'm thinking of like this guy, Lee Graham, who sails around the world starting at age 60 in 1965, and he gets married along the way, that this was that at 16 the kid's ready to do adulthood, and whereas like when you were 16, could you imagine being with adult responsibilities?
No, and I mean, I wouldn't sail around the world. But what about that young girl? There was a girl in Australia who did a solo sail around the world, and they made it into a movie because she like hit a storm. Did you see that movie? And like she did a really risky move with her sailboat. She literally like went into the wave and she went under. Like she went down, 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 and it literally was like really risky. Like all of her coaches and everyone, on land and telling her don't do it, don't do it. She did it. Many other sailors and boats capsized and people died. She was alone. She did it and she survived.
So she must have pulled her sails down, didn't she? Because your sails
I think
wouldn't
so. Yes.
they wouldn't and then what about the mast? Did she have to pull the mast down to do that? Because that's like a surfer move. Because that's how if you're
Yeah.
what was the name of the film? I can look it up so maybe I can watch it.
I don't remember, but it was amazing. It was so good. Let me see if I can find it. But
Well,
I feel like if you can do those things like sail alone, I think she was 16 too.
yeah.
Um, uh, I
So
don't know. Like I just think it's amazing.
let me see. 16.
Okay, so she was born in 1993, the youngest person to sail solo, unassisted,
Okay.
and nonstop around the world. She completed her voyage May 15th, 2010, at the age 16, so same as that guy.
So youngest
Uh, 34,
she was the youngest person,
34.
youngest female to solo trip around the world.
Yep, and she was gone for 210 days, and she overcame storms and 7 knockdowns, so she was taken down like 7 times. What is the movie?
Laura,
Let's see if
her name is Laura Decker, and she was
I thought
a
it was Jessica.
Dutch sailor.
No, no, she was Australian. Jessica Watson
Okay.
is who I'm thinking of. It's called True Spirit. The movie's called True Spirit. It's on Netflix.
Shoe Spirit.
And so I'm not sure that other one, but the movie I'm talking about and the girl I'm talking about is Jessica Watson from Australia.
Solo.
It was an intense movie.
Huh. So she did it in like 210. I see that. She did it in 210 days. And so like for instance, Robin Lee Graham, when he did it, it was like 5 years, and he worked his way around the world too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, she didn't stop. It was like nonstop.
Yeah.
And like the movie shows like how she kind of starts to go stir crazy. Like I couldn't imagine being alone for 210 days.
Yeah.
Not seeing anybody. Like she would, stay connected, through media and stuff, but she starts to get a little homesick. And I think just like with the guy you're talking about who became born again, I think she kind of spirituality in her faith had to really get her through, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Because you have to have something to keep you going.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's because it was the girl that he met was the one that sucked him into the religion. I don't know if that was true, but because they were doing lots of fornicating along the way, because it talked about that in the book too. So
Oh, geez. Oh, my goodness.
well, It didn't exactly go. It just kind of got. It wasn't. It didn't go into the to the details about that, but it just kind of talked about their love adventure along the way, and so it implied that they were doing lots of that up until the time they became born again or something like that.
Interesting, interesting.
Yeah, and so so yeah, but yeah, so she did it in just 210 days, less than a year, because one of the things that Robin Lee Graham talks about was going through the doldrums. I can't remember where the doldrums were at. That's where like let's see, where are the doldrums? And the doldrums are so this is the intertropical convergence zone, and so this is where these different oceans and currents they meet, and then the wind just disappears. And so going through
Yeah.
the doldrums, and then
Hello.
I'm here. I'm just was listening to the walker outside my door, hoping that nobody was barging in a moment here.
Oh.
Um, so yeah, so they have this place where I guess I never really looked it up, but they talked about this where the wind doesn't blow, and I think it was like out there for like 2 weeks, and that was at the time after he was had fallen in love and all that, and then it was like this 2 or 3 or 4 week period where he wasn't getting to the next island fast enough so he could meet his be with his love again, and it was like get falling in love and all that stuff almost um, it almost he almost wasn't able to finish the trip because he just wanted to go get married and just abandon the trip and go back home and start a family because I think he had enough sailing at that time. But yeah, yeah, that's interesting. I'm gonna need to watch that movie True Spirit because I've getting
Yeah, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it says the doldrum dangerous for sailors. The primary danger is becoming becalmed, where a lack of wind prevents any movement for days or weeks. It causes intense mental strain, cabin fever, and physical danger.
yeah,
So
yeah,
people like kind of start losing their mind um, out in the and then I don't know. I literally wanted to sail, but I have a friend who her grandparents had a yacht and they went sailing and um, I don't know if they did really around the world, but they would go out sailing for long stretches of time and um, they were actually their boat was boarded by pirates and lots of dangers that are very real that are still exist that we think are like, oh, that's not real anymore. But pirates are very much still a thing.
mm-hmm.
Um, I think that would be like terrifying. I don't know what I would do if pirates came on my yacht or my ship and you know ransacked it. Because if you're in the middle of the ocean, what are you gonna do? Like, what if you're so far out you can't make it back to land in time, like, and you're out of food, or they murder you, or you know what I mean? Like, it's like things
Yeah,
that people don't think about.
yeah. I'm sure that I think that in the Dove they talked about he did have a firearm on board, but he usually mostly used it for like shooting sharks and stuff like that. And
Mm,
but but it was I think that the I can't imagine you. I guess you're because I didn't think about the whole pirates thing, and he never actually talked about pirates in the story. So maybe it was that the path that he took was more well traveled, and then but maybe it was safer. Maybe the oceans were safer in the '60s than they are today. but they certainly
Yeah,
weren't.
I mean, I don't know when my friends' grandparents, I mean, they're obviously older. I don't know. I don't think any of them are still around. I think they passed. So I don't know when they went. I don't know if it was like the 70s or the 80s. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, because I know that piracy has always been a real thing. Because they talked about, like in the 17 and the 1800s, because people were getting captured at sea all the time, especially when the New World was being colonized, and that
Mm.
people were whole ships of people were being captured, and they were taken down to Africa and cast into slavery. It was like, because I think one of the first American war was at Tripoli, and that was one of the places where pirates let out onto the sea. The pirates at Tripoli, yeah, the Tripoli. That was the very first American war. Was a naval battle in Tripoli to ensure some shipping lanes and things like that. And so what I had remembered from history is that coming out of England and France, they had entire treasure ships that they would take down into that area, like to northern, like to Libya, to other parts of northern Africa, and because their people got captured by pirates and they got cast into slavery, and so they would go pay the ransom so you can get your people back. And so
Mm.
I suppose if you were poor, it just means that you were completely screwed. If the government's gonna bail you out that way, if the French government or the English government or the German government or the Spanish government is going to do that, and so that was like commonplace, because that was like one of the things that a lot of you know we we had. Yes, there was the chattel slavery that went on in the United States, but there was these other things, slavery that was going on exactly at the same time, where where people, all people, were vulnerable to capture and then
Mhm.
and cast into slavery. And yeah, yeah, and that was,
Wow, I didn't know about that. That's interesting.
yeah. So yeah, it wasn't just the Africans um, being put into slavery in the United States or in Spain or in Britain or in France. It was also white people enslaved down into African areas as well, and that was just commonplace, especially after the new world opened up and there was so much more shipping that was going, boats that were going across the continents and everything else. But usually, before the Panama Canal was opened up, or before they had like canals that went through like the Suez Canal and those places, and so you had to go clear to go to go to you had to go clear around the Horn of Africa, and then if you wanted to go to China or someplace like that, you had to go around there. And so that's where people were vulnerable. They were vulnerable.
Yeah, that's like the most dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So so your ancestors wrote like a log like of the expenses on the Mayflower? Is
This
that what
isn't
I'm
this isn't from
saying?
no, Sarah. This isn't from the Mayflower. This is from their trip when
Oh.
the first wave of people came to Oregon, when they came out from
Oh,
Ohio.
okay.
Because
Mm.
the my Mayflower descendant peoples, they settled in Ohio in the 1800s, and not all the ones that are just the direct line that goes like from the from the the John Howland, and then you're going through things, and you're going into the whoever they, I think they were at this time, they were Bosworths, and then they're the Bosworth family, and then they came in and they settled in they bought a house in Ohio in like 1800, and because they were in that house 150 years before they uh, total, I think is about what. Yeah, we were on that property for about 150 years. And that was my mother's mother's family,
Mm.
and so yeah, and but this is a journal about. It was written by this Lucy Minor Bosworth, and this Lucy Minor Bosworth was also a missionary. If I've got my persons right, she was a missionary in China and started a women's college in the 1800s, which actually when it,
Wow, that's awesome.
yeah, and then and so here, my physics professor at at uh, at the private college that I went to, I went to a Baptist college, and my physics professor took a group of students over to China, and they looked up that college, and actually the college still exists, but it's not a college anymore. It's like a private high school. I think it's like it might be like, I think it's co-ed now, but it may not. But still, it still exists. That the education establishment still exists today. It's just not a women's college anymore. And so she was all,
That's so amazing.
yeah.
Would you ever go over and like see it and visit?
You know what? I don't like airplanes.
Oh yeah, I understand. I don't either. You could take a trip on a ship like our ancestors did.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, but I wanted to go visit. There are two places I really wanted to go. I wanted to go visit the Philippines, and I wanted to go visit Thailand, and Thailand more than
Mm.
the Philippines, because the Philippines being, like, that's easy. It's an easy place to go and get scammed out of your money. That's my understanding anyway. It's like the Philippines. It's safe, but most of the people in the Philippines speak English, so you get
Mhm.
so it But I was like, when I was bartending, I was planning this out to try to go to. I wanted to go to Thailand, but I didn't
Mm.
want to to. It was like over a day of I think it was like 30 hours of traveling and 36 hours of traveling, and I didn't want to do a layover in either Japan, China, or Hong Kong, or South Korea. If I had to, I was like putting the monies together to see if I could do this, and I wanted to go to Thailand, but it was like I didn't want to go that way. What I wanted to do was to see if I could get the flight to go from Hawaii to Guam to the Philippines, and then to you know to Thailand. I know that it'd probably be 2 days of traveling. That one I couldn't figure out, but maybe I would have needed to actually have the money in my hand and then go to a travel agent and say, "Can you make this happen this way?" You know?
Yeah, I think that's what you would have to do. That I think the travel agent could make it happen for sure.
Yeah, yeah. That would have been
You
that.
know, and
What was
there's
that?
like places that like do tours and stuff. Maybe you could find a tour that would do exactly that.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know, but that amount of money that it would take to go do that. I would thinking. I
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot. I mean, I would like to go. I would like to go to Hawaii again, though. Go spend, you know, because you don't have to leave the United States. You just stay within your country, and regardless of what the state of the country is, but I still live here. You're still
Right,
you're still
exactly, exactly.
You know,
Or you could go to the U.S. Virgin Islands. I have a friend who literally just moved last week to the U.S. Virgin Islands.
yeah, I
And
have,
I'm like, oh, that's an idea. Maybe I should move there.
yeah, yeah, or go to Puerto Rico or something, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, that I my one of my best friends, she uh yeah, we dated for a while, but I felt like it when I was with her, like she was my sister.
Mm.
And
So you guys probably have a karmic like relationship. Like maybe you two were siblings in a past life.
yeah, that was when I kissed her, it was like this doesn't feel right. This feels like I'm kissing my sister. And
Ew.
I just, yeah, it was like, ooh, yeah, it was just like that. It was like, and then you know, and then of course it was kind of heartbreaking for her, but 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 after, you know, she thought about it for a while, she said, you know, you're right. This wasn't, we're great friends, and let's just stay and see. We're still great friends today. And I've been like, she sent me a movie for my Christmas. It was the Paul. The name of the movie was Paul, because we share a similar sense of humor, like, you know, Galaxy Quest, or like we,
Mm.
or you know, or like Office Space. Um,
Mhm.
but you know, like more like Galaxy Quest, because we, you know, I think at one time I had that movie memorized because I watched it so many
Oh
times.
wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's cool.
yeah. But anyways, yeah. So the phone works. The phone works. I gotta get.
Can you hear like both conversations on the playback on the
I
it's
think.
all like
The sound balance is probably off because you are with the phone are 3 inches away from the microphone, whereas I am like a foot and a half, and so it's probably a lot louder. And so this is like a trial run. I'll listen to the playback and we'll see how I need to tune it. And but the other thing is in this situation is the mic stand itself. Every movement gets every movement of this microphone reverberates into a sound on the and it has that, there's a certain sound that it makes, and which to me it annoys the hell out of me. And but
oh
I know that what I need to do is get a dedicated mic stand, a floor mic stand, not a mic stand mic thing where it clamps to the table, because then every movement of the table will turn into
easier.
that noise on the microphone. And so that's like, okay, I have, that's like a 50 for that one is like, hold on a second here.
Camera, they don't have to, you know, a lot of people
Yeah,
are fine talking. A lot of people are camera shy.
yeah. You know what? I need to just take a short break here and go turn the TV off, and then I'll be right back. Can you just hang out here for a minute here, Sarah?
Okay.
Yeah. Let me turn the TV off. You have water in your CPAP machine and water in. Hold on. I'm back on now. All right. So
Okay.
my yeah yeah I think, oh yeah, because we did that once before when you were hanging out. My first time I did this show, and I left the microphone open while I go and help my mother do her nighttime getting ready to for bed things. And but anyways, but so I got to remember not to I got to remember to mute the mic as I leave. And
Yeah. Use the mic when you.
yeah, yeah. Anyways, so we got I got totally distracted. So I was talking about that this journal here, and it like I'll just kind of read an entry out on it too. Um,
Okay.
so this is Monday, May 8th, 1882. And so the first night out from Mr. Chester's, where we had stayed nearly a week, we are camping in a lovely little nook near San Felix Station, 5 miles from San Mateo in Spring Valley. The night is a perfect one, and everything promises rest. The ride has been very pleasant. We bade goodbye to the San Jorge Valley and the dear old ocean, which was like silver paper crushed in the hand and spread out again. In a few minutes, from the top of the mountains, we came in sight of San Francisco Bay in the blue distance. The view down the valley toward Spanish Town was lovely. May 9th, Tuesday, noon. Arrived at Redwood Camp, having in the noon passed through San Mateo, a lovely town hidden in trees, camped for dinner under a live oak in the edge of the town, afternoon rye, found Mr. Fitch and got his camping utensils. Toward night, we moved into an open space by and camped under a large tree where we spent a pleasant night. Some explosions of fireworks suggested the thought that the Chinese bill may be signed. I wonder what that there was like that was some Chinese law. Maybe they were because I know there was like some troubles in history of that time where they wanted to because they brought a lot of Chinese people over to build the railroad. And so
Right.
with the American history of its tension that it had with immigrants and bringing people in from other countries to do labor and then wanting to get rid of them when so everything that we have going on now is still a repeat of history. I didn't want to talk about that. I said no politics on this show, but that's not necessarily politics. That's current events, and
History.
current events becomes history.
Yeah.
And becomes history. And so this is like a little piece of history, personal history, and this is the stuff that history books are made out of. They're made out of journal entries. I mean, how else do you think that Howard Zinn wrote the People's History of the United States? You know, or Heather Cox Richardson, but she's a political historian, but other historians and how they reconstruct the history of the United States, through letters and through things like that. Or you think
Yeah.
those, yeah, you take like,
I love it. That's so cool that you still have that in your possession, and it's so valuable. Like, that's priceless.
yeah, yeah. And so what does it say? Let me just go read the opening preamble here is Franklin Bosworth was born on July 5th in 1817 in Mantua, Ohio, and died at Tabor, Iowa, February 11th, 1879. Losing his father when but little more than 2 years old, He soon learned that orphan's lot was a sad one. He had many homes and was bound out to learn a trade more than once. Learning that of a tailor, he lived with his sister Mercy Grosbeck for some time, and had pleasant memories of it, and did his nephews and nieces for whom he as did his nephews and nieces for whom he cared. He worked a year at his trade at Austinburg, Ohio, and that, you should think that's 1840, and was converted at Aurora, I don't know what that means, Ohio, at a ME meeting. So that must be some church meeting, ME, because they were Congregationalists, but maybe
Mhm.
that was, I don't know what ME is. At the age of 23, and married at Bloomfield, Ohio. Lucy Jane Warren, age 16, had worked in his shop. So here we go. It's like, I guess when I go full circle back into this conversation about people today growing up slower, and my thoughts on that matter is because there's not enough work opportunities for people when they're legally able to start working at age 15. When you get your.
Well, I mean, do we want kids growing up fast? I don't know. I mean, do I think it's appropriate for that guy in the 60s to get married at 16? No, I don't think it was appropriate then, and it's not appropriate now. But
I
um,
I think that he got married when he was 20, not 21.
oh, okay.
He was married at 20, 19 or 20.
But yeah, I do think like working obviously makes you older. Like it makes you grow up faster. Um, Having to work on a farm, you grow up faster, but you have real life skills. I mean, real life skills aren't taught now. Like schools don't even teach home ec or shop anymore, do they? I don't think they do. Like those are real life applicable skills to help you. You know, you're not kids aren't taught how to balance checkbooks. I don't think kids even have checkbooks anymore. Or
Yeah.
it's just an example. Like our generation, yeah, maybe we still had home ec and shop, but we weren't taught to like we weren't taught finances. We weren't taught how to like balance a checkbook. Like all these real life things either
I
your parents had to teach you or you had to learn yourself, just trial and error.
yeah, I
And I don't
actually
know, I think it's a in the world back then, like 60s and before, their parents, the community, were teaching kids from a very young age, like how to be an adult, how to be functioning in society, and like we've totally lost that. Like nobody's taught how to function in society. It's just kind of like kids, young adults are just thrown out to the wolves, like sink or swim, figure it out.
that's right, but that's the thing is it's that where my buddy who's a couple years younger than me, because we have this conversation all the time, and it's that I think what he says is it's that there's not enough opportunities for teenagers to interact with adults, or for
Mm-hmm.
having these experiences, like maybe you get you're a lucky one and you get a summer job ushering at a movie theater or something like that. But you're also surrounded by a bunch of other kids, which is good because it's other kids that you're around. It's not just all adults, and you get the responsibilities of you're making popcorn, or you're sweeping the floor, or you're doing things like that. I mean, my job at I think at 15, I got a worker's permit when I was 15. My first time worked for money, I was 14. It was between 8th and ninth grade, and it was under the table. and I think I was paid $5 an hour when the minimum wage was like 3. And I was doing, I was working in the family business. I was piling lumber, but my dad made sure that no, when he hired people who were under 18, that none of them worked around. They didn't operate any saws or anything like that, and so he didn't even. I don't. I think he. Yeah. I think I'm trying to think of when did I first learn how to use a chainsaw. I think I was probably like 16 or something like that. But yeah, yeah. But I do remember being 12 years old and my mom taking me down to the mill, or being on the weekends going down to the mill with my dad, and then being 12 or 13 years of age, and then like splitting firewood and spending 4 hours just splitting firewood and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. I don't think that I got paid for that, because the first time I remember getting paid for a job was, like I said, it was between when I had finished 8th grade and going into ninth grade. But I don't think that I would have been ready for marriage at 18 myself. You know, because
No.
I was rather immature. Because I had like I don't know if I'm probably still am really immature too.
I don't know. I think, I mean, the brain doesn't fully develop until 25. So I honestly don't think anyone should be getting married and having children before the age of 25. I think, yeah, do people do it? Yes. Um,
Hmm.
are some parents at that age good parents? Yeah, maybe. But a lot of them are still growing up and still figuring it out. And it's, I don't know. I think it's a disservice to children, um, to have parents who are trying to figure it out. I mean, as you said, you still feel immature. There's times I still feel immature. I'm like, well, I don't. The older you get, the more you realize you don't know anything.
Yeah.
Um, that we have nothing figured out. We don't know anything, and I mean, maybe you should get married young, and when you're young, foolish, and brazen, and full of like audacity. I don't know. Um, because the older you get, the less audacity you have, and you're like, oh well, I don't know anything, and I don't have enough money. And when you're young, I mean, I think that's why. I mean, we don't want to take it there, but I think that's why the country wants to push younger people to get married and have kids so soon, because they don't stop to think about it. Like, oh, I don't have the money to support myself, let alone, you know, 2, 3 children. Um, and what does it cost? Like, I don't know how many millions to raise one child. So, I mean, I don't know, over a lifetime, it's a lot of money. So,
I think that maybe some of the push is they want, um, it's because of the demographic collapse. But it's like, okay, all right. So a lot of the first world countries are in the process of having, if they, because of people not having 3 children per married couple. And I think that's what the it's the replacement amount plus you grow. So you have to have it. 2 is just replacement, but in order to grow the population, it's like 3. But then what is there, like 7 billion people? Why do we need to grow the population?
yeah, and see, that's just silly. I don't think we need to grow. I mean, especially if we have AI and we're going to have robots, and the world is going to look vastly different after 2030. So why push a population? Like, we don't need and this is just natural, population's declining worldwide. It's not just here. It's happening in Europe. It's happening in China. It's happening everywhere. And um, there's social economic reasons for that, and there's also the fact that people are just saying there's 7, 8, or 8 billion people on the earth, on the planet. We don't need to keep, like, it's silly. And what for? What, so we can be enslaved in a system or pushed out of a system? And then what are our children going to do? Like, what are they going to do for work? How are they going to make money? How are they going to survive when we can barely survive? When people can barely afford to live in a closet, and nobody can afford medical or health insurance.
Yeah.
So what's the point? When everything has become unaffordable and everything has become uncertain, why reproduce? I don't know. I look at my nephew who's 26, who has never lived alone. He has his master's degree in law, and but like I look at him and I'm like, well, what life skills? He didn't have a job until he graduated law school. Like, he
Mm-hmm.
didn't work until he was 25 years old.
Yeah.
He's never lived on his own. I don't know if he's ever even done his laundry on it by himself. Like, I'm like, and now he's looking into a year after working, looking into buying a house and getting married, and I'm like, how? What life skills?
Yeah.
What was he really taught? Like, what life skills was he taught other than school?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like, it makes me scared for him and his generation and younger, because I'm like, they're not getting, a lot of these kids aren't going away to college like our generation got to go away, because they can't afford it. They can't afford to live on campus. They can't afford to pay, um, to live. It's just not affordable. So they're commuting or they're doing it online. But then that's just delaying adulthood even further.
Well, maybe your nephew. Is that right? Your nephew?
Huh?
It was your nephew? Yeah. So maybe your
Yeah, my
nephew,
nephew.
maybe your nephew needs to begin what the thing that we need to do in this country instead is the reformation of multi-generational households. And so if he's still living with his parents at 26, and I think that's when my father moved out, was when he got married at 27. But actually no, he had gone away to graduate school, and then he dropped out at the end of the first semester, and then joined the army, in which he was gone for 2 or 3 years. And but his parents, which were immigrants, his mom especially, was so disappointed when Dad called from boot camp to say, "Oh, by the way, I'm not coming home for Christmas." And oh, I dropped out of college. I dropped out of my PhD program, and I'm in the army. I'm in wherever he was, Fort Bragg or someplace like that, where he was going through boot camp. And then from there, they shipped him off to Germany for 2 years. And so that was
Wow.
like his first opportunity, living. He was because he graduated from high school when he was 17, and started the PhD program when he was 21. But like I said, he didn't. He finished. For himself, it was a matter that he wanted to be an engineer, and everybody was pushing him into academic life.
Mm.
And so rather than and then so instead of doing what everybody wanted to him, he just gave him the big fu and did what he wanted to do. But
No, but good for him. And I think joining the army, like, I think for, like, men, even women, especially now, like, I think joining the military is great because it gives you a lot of life skills, like practical skills. It gives you a career path, and it gives you practical skills. It teaches you discipline and, you know, um, cleanliness, neat, like how to be neat, like how to be clean, how to, like, take care of yourself, how to take care of others. um, I think it teaches like really great life skills, and you know, I think that's important too. So I think, whatever people's feelings about the military, I think it has some, positives. Yeah, there's negatives to it too, but I think there's a lot of positives as well. And I
Yeah.
think that the military, more than school, gives you life experiences in it, and it helps you build interpersonal relationships, and like some would argue in some ways I think it builds empathy. I know you could argue with me on that point, but to they're trained to look out for people, right? Like, I mean, I know they're also trained to do the opposite, but um, you know, I don't know. I think that there's a lot of positives um, to joining the military. I have some regrets. I had multiple, opportunities and people like trying to get me to join the Air Force, and then later when I wanted to go to graduate school to join the Army because I wanted to go into mental health counseling, and the Army needs counselors, they need therapists. So
Mhm.
there was multiple times throughout my education and throughout my life where people were trying to recruit me, and I kind of regret not joining the military, but
Mhm.
um, because I think that it gives you a lot of opportunities. Um,
Well,
I mean, some
and then
people who join just love it, and then there's other people who they serve their 4 years and they're done.
yeah, yeah, yeah. My father was that way because when I was 19 and I went I went to do a military physical. I did the test and everything, and then all through that whole process, my dad was saying, "You're gonna regret it. Don't do this. Don't do this, Bill. Don't do this. You're not
Interesting.
you're not the right personality to be. You don't have the right personality to go into the army. Don't do this."
Mm.
And I went to the physical, and then I had a skin condition, and I still have the same skin condition, and they wanted me to see a specialist, and then but I had had enough at the end of that physical. I had enough, and I decided that I wasn't going to sign the papers, and
Uh-huh.
I didn't go in, and I don't really regret that either because no, I don't regret that at all. But I had an experience later on in my life that would when I after I graduated from college and I worked as a wildland firefighter, and that was a wonderful experience because it was mostly all pretty much all men, but there was some women. It was hard in those all male crews for women to work with the men because of how men are, and when
Uh-huh.
you're young men, and it was much easier for that kind of a physical labor for it to be all males because because males do need to be amongst one another, especially when at that age, you know that there's that outlet for we that you need that softball team if you're that kind of a person. You need the bowling leagues, but the bowling leagues are co-ed, and you know that those kind of opportunities for when you're an adult to have that camaraderie with others, and because there's way too much loneliness in our civilization, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not opposed to, men or men only spaces or women only spaces. I think it is important, and I think, men need to have other men and male friendships, and I think that's important. But so do women. Women need to have like, you know, friendships, and being a women's studies major, have lucked out. Most of my career jobs that I've worked throughout my life it's been mainly with women.
Mm-hmm.
And I prefer as well, like, you enjoy being in the all male. I preferred for the most part working under, having women leaders and being around mainly women, like 90% women in women fields. And I'm working now where I'm working with men who are much older, much, much, much older, and um, from a very different cultural background from myself. And for me, it's been challenging.
Yeah.
My patience is tested on the daily because these men have worked mainly in all male spaces, so they don't realize, like, don't talk, you don't need to talk loudly, and you don't need to drop the F bomb every other word, and you don't need to talk a certain way, and you don't need to, like, make that joke. And you know what I mean? It's almost like they forget, and I'm like, they have no empathy and they have no spatial awareness, and they don't realize who's around or what they're saying. And I've just never been around a group of people who are so socially inept and,
Mm-hmm.
like, so unaware.
Well, and then
um,
then you think about talking loud and like, cause I talk loud because I'm hard of hearing.
hmm
I've
well,
and most men by the time they are my age are hard of hearing from
mm,
because of the nature of young men and their machismo because every you know most men regardless of whatever where they sit on the spectrum of their between their you know what I'm talking about, the whole
I do.
and between on that spectrum of maleness to femaleness, because everyone has that spectrum within them and has a certain amount of that. And then when you are in relationship to one another in that married relationship, then you tend to that oftentimes you tend to balance each other out, and the woman becomes more feminine and the man becomes more masculine, of course. But with the case of one of my aunts and uncles, she married a very feminine man and she was very masculine, and it went the other way. So he became way more feminine and she became way more masculine. And but together they were like a complete male and female. And what was I going with this? But anyways, what and so when you are a man and you are in a completely male space, when you're especially when you're like 16 to like 20 something years of age, if it's working around machines and doing stuff like that, you're likely to not wear ear protection. You're likely to
Mm,
not do the safety things that you need to do to ensure your long-term survival, your long-term health.
yeah.
Like your hearing.
Well, I mean, but that doesn't end though. Like, I mean, I mean, not to be, but this is the conversation, or especially, it's like, oh, there's a war on men, and the male loneliness epidemic. But the problem with the manosphere and, like, men is that, like, most men view taking care of themselves and their health as being feminine, and so then they just don't take care of their health or their hygiene or
Mm,
anything for their whole lives because they see that as feminine. And that's a problem too. It's like, you got to get rid of this idea that taking care of yourself and, like, cleaning yourself and, like, making doctor's appointments is feminine. It's not. That's just being an adult, is like
yeah,
taking
yeah.
brushing your teeth twice a day, flossing your teeth, every day,
Oh, I got to.
showering at least once a day. There's just so many men who just, um, I don't know, like, they just are like, that's feminine, so I'm not gonna do it.
Oh,
And I think that's the problem, is this, like, pushing down femininity or anything associated with women and being like, women suck and women are this and we're better than women and we don't want to be anything like women, and you know what I mean? I think this like so as a women's studies major and as a feminist, this is the problem with society is like labeling things masculine and feminine and then being like, if it's feminine, let's just degrade it so much
Hmm.
that then men start neglecting themselves.
Well,
And it's like, well, that's not society's problem. Like, you're an adult. Like, that's it's your responsibility as an adult human being to take care of your health, to
yeah,
go to the
that's
doctor. You know what I mean?
personal responsibility, taking personal responsibility for your health.
Yes.
I mean, I've been thinking about. Of course, I struggle with my blood sugar. I guess I I I I I went into diabetes recently. I haven't had the diagnosis, but I I probably
You can
shouldn't say
feel
this,
it.
but I have when I went to the eye doctor a week ago, it showed damage on my retina due to blood sugar, high blood sugar, and so
Oh,
now I'm having to, I've been struggling with pre-diabetes for 20 years, and I've
yeah.
gone back and forth trying to, to do the lifestyle changes. Now I'm like forced because I'm thinking, okay, if I don't do this lifestyle change, then I'm gonna go blind. I'll be blind in like 10 years or less, or who knows, or maybe I won't even live another 10 years. I may not live another 10 years. I may, I might lose my kidneys or something like that. And so I've been like, oh, it's like you're trying to do make those changes. You have to take personal responsibility for yourself. I know that
Yeah.
I'm not the only person in this sphere that is in my age group or younger who is struggling with these same issues of because what did they say, with because of the American diet, that 33% of Americans is pre-diabetic by the time they're 40 years of age.
Yeah.
And then if you don't do anything, by the time you're like 60, you're most likely going to be diabetic if you just go down the path. Even if you're trying to make those lifestyle changes, how to do the exercise to burn the blood sugar out of your blood, or how to do those kinds of things, or to pull the weed out. So this is like the I guess the second time in my life that I'm working to try to pull the refined carbs out of my life. And so then it's like you get massive candy cravings. And so I've been experimenting
Yeah.
around with like making black bean brownies. But the hard part about it is that my oven went out on me in on Christmas Day, and so I've been trying to do this stuff in the microwave, and then
Oh no.
yeah, and then I want crackers, and I have some crackers, I have some saltines, but I gotta get some stabilization first before I can go and have some of those get the exercise routines down a little bit, to get the get so that when I wake up in the morning, I test my blood sugar, that it's in the normal range. And I've actually had a few of those days already, and I've just been concentrating on this for like 2 weeks, and so like maybe doing a lot of heavier exercises, like some things like some planking, but not not horizontal planks, but more vertical planks, because I'm not whatever. It's like, so you kind of
Yeah.
lean against a door or a wall, and then you just kind of sit in that position for as long as you can do it, and then that's kind of. But then you know, or you I take some books, some big coffee table books, and have piled them up, so they're about this tall, about 3 inches, and I do step up and step down on that. There's an exercise bike in the house, but after mother goes to bed, um, she's like super has a super sensitive hearing, so I would want to like to watch the TV, and because I'm hard of hearing, I'm jacking the volume up on the TV,
Mm.
and then I can't hear anything when I'm on that exercise bike because it's so loud. So then doing the step up, step down, I have the TV on quiet, and I'm like, just about a few feet away from it, and I can hear it okay. But it's these challenges. But
Yeah.
that's that taking responsibility for yourself. I mean, like one of my coworkers, when I was bartending, he was just like just a couple months. I think he was like a year older than me, and he's in really, really bad shape. He was like in full on diabetes. I think he was. Um, I know that he was Native American, but not. You wouldn't know it by looking at him, but he was from one of the a tribe in Florida. Um, he told me what it was, but he had spent most, like I think the first 20 years of his working career being that guy who crawls up to the top of a tree and then cuts the tree down off the top.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so you crawl up a tree with a chainsaw, and then you take it.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was that guy. He did that until he damaged his body too much, so he couldn't do it anymore. But all along the way, starting when he was like even like a teenager, he had learned how to bartend and how to do
Oh.
wait staff, and he was doing that all along too. And so he just like slipped into it, and then when he could no longer work in the woods, he just went into doing bartending, and he was a really good bartender. And but by the time when I was working underneath him with him, he had really bad diabetes and his migraines, and then he was getting like cellulitis and stuff like that on his hands. And so I pretty much got his job. I got his job because became disabled, and
Oh, that's too sad.
and then I think that last time I think I heard I think he's still alive, but he has like congestive heart failure, and he's not even 60 years old. He will be
Oh
60, 60,
wow.
60 years old, but that's just the whole thing of taking responsibility for your health. And I just didn't see that as a male female thing. I didn't see that as a female thing. I thought it was just a matter of like it's you have that whole conservative viewpoint of personal responsibility and taking personal responsibility for you. And 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 because they talk about that all the time, don't they? Is that what they talk about? Oh, it's all about personal responsibility when you.
Oh yeah, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, which is a total myth, and what that means, like the the origin of pull yourself up by the bootstraps, like it doesn't mean what it's come to mean. Like the way that it was said was like nobody can pull themselves up by the bootstraps. Like it's just not a thing. Like it's just not possible. So that's a myth. But yeah, I mean, yeah, they talk about personal accountability and like, not relying on anyone and not asking for help and but those are very damaging messages too. Just work, 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 work till you're dead.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, I
that
mean,
Puritan culture of like no fun, don't laugh, don't drink, don't smoke, don't um,
hmm
listen to music, don't dance, work, 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 work. So my mother's family, like we discussed, came over on that. Well, so growing up, I was always told, oh, our ancestors came over not on the Mayflower but one of the other ships. But then finding out later after my mom's cousins did the genealogy that no, our ancestors came over on the Mayflower, and I can't remember their names, but um, they were the people that they were like the ones who were shown like stepping off the Mayflower. It was them, and like the Puritans, like the art and stuff. It's based off of her and our ancestors, my ancestors, um, and like they were known. Basically, they were like settled. Um, what is current day like Salem and Amherst, Massachusetts, and
hmm
that's where they were until they went north. But anyway, I always joked with my mom because her family, like, they were farmers. Um, like, their sense of humor was, like, super, super dry, like, so dry. And, like, very little music. It was, like, church was life, like, everything centered around family and children, especially children. And, like, um, everything was so, like, G-rated and, like, no cursing, don't take the Lord's name in vain, like, so buttoned up, prim and proper, like, you don't laugh, you don't smile, you don't show emotion, like, don't cry, um, like, very stiff upper lip. And I'd always be like, you guys are such Puritans, and then, like, finding, oh, well, yeah, they're Congregationalists, and Congregationalists were the Puritans. And it's like, oh, like, it used to be a joke, and now it's just like, oh, no, that's my mom's family, like, that's them. um, and so, yeah, I mean, it's very, like, that hard, you live off the land, and, um, I don't know.
But when I kind of
Church is
see
life.
about when I kind of see about that part of the a lot of the victim blaming and you see when I see, I mean, it's like the negative aspects of Christianity is that there's this devil, this outside forces to blame for your problems, and where it, to me, it seems like maybe for a lot of people it's not about taking personal responsibility for your life.
Exactly. See, I agree with that. I think more along that lines too. I think that victim blaming is absolutely 100% like in their MO. Like, very conservative religious people love to victim blame, and they also like to shift blame. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and, like, as a woman, in my standpoint of growing up in two different religions, well, Christian religions, the Catholic Church and the Congregationalist Church, is, as a woman, I always felt like very, like, okay, well, everybody blames women, and I see why society blames women too. Like, women are the receptacles of, like, let's just put all the burden, like, all societal issues, it's women's fault.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes back to Eve. And so you just see this. And so not only is it, like, victim blaming and, like, let's blame women for all of Christianity, like, for everything. And um, the people in power and the people with power don't like to stop and do inner reflection or self-examination or take personal accountability for their actions or inactions. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it extends all the way to, like, purity culture of, like, telling little girls, like, you can't wear a bathing suit, you can't wear a bikini, you can't do this, you can't do that because you're tempting men. Well, no, they're just trying to exist. They're just trying to enjoy their childhood. Why not go tell men to stop being perverted, and, like, if you really are in charge of, again, accountability, if you really are the greater sex, right? Like, if you're really the head of the household, well, then why can't you check your wandering eyes? Why can't you be like, it's wrong to look at my daughter or my niece or my, that way, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
can't they take accountability for the way that they're looking at children?
Yeah, I think so, and it's like that would be like a for your own self. I think it was like things that my dad talked about when he talked about some of his uncles and or relatives when they were around children, and because he kind of thought that they might have been perverts like that, so they wanted to say, just get that kid away from me. I don't want that child anywhere near me. So it was maybe their way of taking personal responsibility for themselves and say, I don't want any. I just stay away from me. And
Well, hey, I wish more people, if they have, would do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, instead of being like, oh, well, that child's just existing, and,
mm-hmm.
well, then, um, you know, all of were, all share like what happened to me. I was as a 13-year-old girl. We're in Montreal, and I'm dressed in jeans and at the time like the peasant shirt.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like all frilly, but I'm like fully covered head to toe. I've got a hat on. I've got sunglasses on. Um, and I'm in, what do they call it? The underground with my parents. So I think we were going up the escalators to go back above ground. So the underground in Montreal is, like it's a big shopping. Like they have this big city under Montreal. And anyway, we're going up the escalator, and I go like a few steps in front of my parents, like maybe 5 steps at the most. So I get to the top of the escalator first, and this man comes up to me, and a friend, he's grabbing himself and he's propositioning me. Nobody has to speak French to know what he just said to me.
Mm-hmm.
My parents come up behind me, grab me. Instead of saying anything to that pervert and yelling at him for speaking to a child, I get pulled away, and then I get an hour lecture about how I was inappropriate because I stepped 5 steps away from my parents, and that I tempted him, and it's my fault, and how dare I, and be aware, and like for a whole hour. I'm like, I'm a child.
Yeah.
Why aren't you yelling at him? I didn't go out of my way. I didn't say anything to him. I didn't look at him. I didn't speak to him. I stood there frozen like, oh no, there's nowhere for me to go.
Yeah. You're kind of just like trapped in this situation, and and that's the thing, is there's all that kind of stuff that happens. The dangers of being children is just what you outlined there and talked about. I mean, and then there's like other dangers. I mean, what I talk about, like the kinds of dangers or things that maybe that damaged me as a person was actually did happen at my father's mill, and that because in the outhouse there was a big pile of girly magazines in there, and so you're being a kid, and then so like the because it was men, and then down in the pawn shack it was, and the guy who operated the pawn was like looking at like Playboys and penthouses and stuff like that while he was on the job, or having having his lunch and or whatever, and so I had like exposure to that kind of material when I was like young, or and it was like of course that stuff was like when you're 13 or 14, that was really exciting stuff to be looking out for a 13, 14-year old. But but then you look at, when I look now at this age, time of my life, I don't necessarily feel like I was maybe it's at this time in my life I've worked through all of that stuff, but there was a point in time that maybe where that was a part of my trauma. Does that make any sense?
No, it does. That is absolutely abusive. Like, that is child abuse and not traumatic, because you weren't at an age, you weren't emotionally, you weren't emotionally ready to see that. Like, it didn't happen naturally on your own time. Like, you were exposed to it before you were ready to be exposed to that.
Well, it was there, present, and it wasn't like it was present. It was present there in the environment, and there wasn't anybody to say that it was like wrong or anything like that. But that's I guess that's part of that whole thing of being one of the free range, kids, or the free rangers, where you were, you know, there were the pluses. The pluses of it is that we did have the freedom to go around and do things, but the negative aspects of it was you did get exposed to a lot of dangers as well. Or you look
Right.
at like some of the other dangers that I was exposed to, like riding a mini bike when I was like 9 or 10 years of age, and then wrecking the damn thing, almost running into a car, but narrowly missing a car. But then the throttle was stuck wide open because it was like a simple gasoline engine, and then almost biting my tongue off. You know,
Oh my goodness.
so I think I was like 10 years old at that time. Or
Wow, that's scary.
other, yeah, kind of stuff like that. And then
Yeah.
there was lots of dangers to growing up. You know,
Yeah.
you're like with
Yeah.
with being around. That, I mean, I think I remember the first time I saw one of those. I saw a flasher. I was up in Seattle. I was waiting for a bus, and there was a guy on the other side of the street, and he was like, there were all these women over there. They were waiting for the bus, but they were all like scattered this way and that way, a long ways away. And the guy was, uh, 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 you know, um, he had his pants down, and then he's kind of
Oh.
showing himself off, and I said, well, nobody wants to see that. Why?
No.
I don't want to see that. I'm across the street, but I'm kind of, you're waiting for your bus. It's not like and no one was, and people were just scattering away and that way, and then the bus pulls up, and then maybe the bus driver gets out and chases the guy away, or calls the cops or something like that. I don't remember. It was something like that, but you know, I'm thinking, who wants to see that? I don't want to see that.
Yeah. Nobody wants to see that. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
There's dangers for like everybody. Like, um, I know that like boys and men have their own trauma and their own things to work through and their own damaging messages that they receive.
Hmm.
um, you know that uh, I just feel that religion, as the way it is presented in this country today, is, I feel at this moment in time, does more damage than it helps anybody.
Hmm.
Um, and this is just, a, my what I've seen is like these churches have tax exemptions because they like supposedly do a lot of community outreach, but then there's a number of churches that like they do the bare minimum to keep that tax exemption, um, and they don't really help people. They might go and like put on one community dinner for the homeless for the whole year and say, oh, we did our service, we helped the community, and it's like one meal for the homeless for the whole year isn't
Yeah. Well,
enough.
at least the Catholic Church does keep to the mission, because people fund a lot of those homeless services and things. Because when I was active in the Catholic Church, I was I volunteered with Saint Vincent de Paul, but mainly is because
Okay.
I wanted job skills, and I was their treasurer, and I got into their treasurer position, and that was around the time that I was able to go from being got where I got into like almost like a bookkeeping job, but it was kind of that. I called it that, but it was just accounts receivable, accounts payable, data entry, and
Yeah.
you know I would you know get get all the bills prepared, and then somebody else would sign the checks and do all that, and then you take it to the mail, or you take take the get the money and deposit it. When as a treasurer, I was responsible for the Saint this one Saint Vincent Paul's their checkbook, making sure that their bills got paid. But at first when I did it, the monies were really tight, and I had to float the bills, and so they had. You had to figure out, there's not enough money in the bill in the bank account to pay the Safeway bill, or to pay the Kroger bill, or to pay the landlords, when they wrote rent vouchers and things like that. And
Mhm.
so that was like a real life. Of course, I already had that life experience anyway, being growing up and as an adult being broke and to paying your bills, and you have to float the bills, when you're you know you know that was one that I learned early on in my 20s, how to how to float things. And it doesn't do your credit any good, but you know
Right.
but then we became pretty flush with the money when somebody donated like $10,000 or something like that, and then we didn't have to worry about having to do that thing of floating the bills and so forth. And but yeah, that was a valuable experience I had in my 30s. And then also I volunteered with a homeless shelter. I did soup kitchens too. I did because when I went to Seattle, I did a lot of that, because all that stuff was available, and as much of that volunteer work as I could. I don't do any volunteer work now because I did it all for like 10 years. I did lots of it. And but that's the thing, that's the one thing is about the Catholic Church, is that it does a lot of, yes, it does a lot of, like you say, in your experience, there's a lot of religious trauma that can come out of church families and so forth. But the organization itself does at least try to feed the hungry.
Yeah.
It tries
I
to.
don't know. It's kind of like a slippery slope because yeah, like at least like how the church like tries, um, to feed the homeless or the unhoused and like house them and give them shelter and but then there's the flip side. And I know there's, positive and negatives to everything. It's we're talking about church because, that's our experience.
Yes.
Um, but then there's the corruption, and then there's like the priests who have that problem we were talking about earlier.
Yes.
Um, and they don't know how to just stay away from the, I laugh, but it's not funny. The countless, boys especially, just traumatized. And,
Yes, because the priesthood is a the priesthood is a magnet
that behavior, yes.
closeted for closeted homosexuals who are have an attraction to youth. Is that how I did I phrase that right?
Yes, you did.
Okay, that's to be as politically correct as possible. That's what that the church has. That it's not just. But then I mean, the priest who confirmed me left the priesthood to get married, and he was married for 3 years before he got divorced. But I think then the lesson I got from that was that maybe when you cross over 40 as a man, you're not equipped to go into a married relationship, regardless of whether you want to or not.
Mm. Why do you think that is? Like, what made you come to that conclusion?
Um, what made me come to that conclusion is that if you've gone a long period of time without any significant relationships, your ability to be in relationship with another individual is, it may not be possible on a romantic level because of how intense those relationships can be.
Mm.
And
So do you think that like they that those like because you said men, do you think those men don't have the emotional intelligence,
it's not just men,
or do you,
it's just it's people, because
or do you think it's everyone,
I
women,
think I think
just
it's
anyone in general?
yes, I think it's in all people, regardless of whether they're man or female, is that
Uh
males
huh.
and females, when they cross over a certain age, and I think it's like 40, it maybe it might but then when you're older like that, then it takes a different kind of commitment and a different kind of discipline, because my aunt, my has my mom's youngest sister, she has a friend who got married for her first time when she was over 50 years of age, and um, I think they're still married, and she's like 75. So it's not to say
Oh
that
wow.
it's just not to say that it can't work, but it's difficult because you have
Yeah.
your life, and your life being, maybe one of the things that might make it difficult is if you have lots of friends,
Right.
and especially if you have opposite sex friends.
Right.
And I don't think it would really even matter whether it's like heterosexual or homosexual relationships. That I think that that type of dynamic would be really really hard, because people, when you are in a romantic relationship, it's really hard to, it takes a lot of discipline to not be jealous.
Right.
and
Yeah.
and jealousy is just one of those things that comes into play. And how do you manage that relationship, and you are 40, 50 years of age, and you have all these friends and people that are your peers that you've kept into contact with all those years, and then you want to see these people, and then what is your spouse going to think about that? You have to be your spouse, and then it's like, then what happens is, like, what can happen is that you're in this situation, and maybe you lie, and you're actually going out and meeting with an ex-girlfriend, and not being upfront, not being upfront, and because you think, well, I don't want my wife to whatever, be jealous, and so instead of being upfront and telling your wife, oh, asking, may I go out to have coffee with my girlfriend from when my in my 20s or something like that, who was a real serious, think these types of situations, and those are types. And or and so but if you're still in a single thing, if you're never married, then you don't have to say no to that. You can say, yeah, sure, let's go have lunch.
Right.
You don't have to consult with anybody.
Right. That's true.
You know.
But why is it in our? Because it's. I feel like it's American culture. I can only speak from American culture. Why is it that we elevate that the only type of love that matters is romantic love
Mm.
between two couples? Okay, why is that elevated so high when friendship love is just as important? And then why do we feel like we have to isolate our partners in
Mm.
marriage? Um, I think that that's a problem. I mean, I
Yeah,
know that for myself, um, being married and not having, those close friendships that I had before I was married, like, negatively impacts my mental health. Like, I miss my friends.
yeah,
But you're right. Like, it's, that jealousy. So, your friends, are with their husband and their families.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, regardless, it's like, okay, well, but I don't understand why we do that. Like, why are we so possessive in our relationships that we want, like, ourselves and our partners to just isolate? Like, I think that's unhealthy too.
Yeah,
Because I
and
think that back, throughout history, even married couples had friends outside of the the marriage. And
yeah, that and
again, with that, like, that self reliance and like the family unit and like putting so much value on it, I think that's also damaging because I think, like you were saying, for young men, it's important for them to have male friendships, and I agree 100%. But I just think in general, it's important to have friendships.
that
Like,
would be that would be the role of having those clubs that they used to have. Like, if you watch old episodes of Honeymooners, and they're always going to the lodge,
the
but then
men,
the men were, but then, see,
yeah,
my mom belonged to one of those when she was first married, like the Rebeccas. And my dad wouldn't have gone to anything like that, because that wasn't he was really he wouldn't have he didn't he didn't associate with that. He was more like, if it's not work, then I can't do it. And he was very focused that way, and he didn't really like have very many friends. And but there were those outlets. You had the lodge, and then there was the men's lodge and the women's lodge, and or you had like when I was up in Seattle, there were there were the baseball teams. They were 18 to is and I think people were over, like, up to 70 years of age, if they could still run around the bases and hit the ball. They had I used to watch these go down to the park in the summertime. I like watching sports, as long as it's not on TV. And
right, yeah,
you know and then you watch a game, and then it's just watching the game. And but I was always amazed by those hardball. They weren't softball leagues, these were hardball leagues. And they had and they was it would last like 6 weeks, and every Saturday there was like 3 or 4 games at the park. And you would see that, you would see people who were 18 years of age, just graduated from high school, all the way up to gray-haired men. And they were playing the game together. They were still out there playing together. They also then every Tuesday and Friday night, was dodgeball at the park at like 7 till like 10 o'clock at night. And that was like mostly 8, 21 and older, but it was supposed to be 18 or 21 and older, because you'd have these people coming, and they came, coming, and you can see that they came straight from the law office to go play dodgeball. And they're taking their ties off and taking their suits off, suit coats, and they were playing dodgeball in dress shoes, and and stuff like that. But that was just that whole hangout stuff, and how important those activities were, and not to be isolated. And I think that probably, but that whole thing of romantic love and jealousy, I think that it's worse in other cultures than it is here, because I've like heard stories of with the Filipinos, and where they have that whole culture of they have the whole mistress culture. Your wife was the mother of your children, and the mother of your children was not somebody who you could be romantic with, and so you were romantic with a girlfriend on the side.
that is so sad.
And then
That's
that
like,
yeah, and that's Asian culture, and that's also Latino culture. There's a lot of that in Latino culture too. And then but then where you hear about the the revenge. I've heard of some of these stories of the revenge that goes on, and so this is why if you're an American man or you're a Caucasian man, and you think that by getting a Filipino wife that you're going to be getting a good deal, it you may not be getting a good deal at all, because you will be inheriting a lot of this baggage, that this is their own societal trauma that you're going to be getting. And so what I had heard like was that when men do marry Filipino women and they bring them over to the United States, and then there's a sense of how much anger and jealousy that there are in those relationships. And so then if you were a man who did want to meet with your friends, you would be met with so much anger and hostility around that. And that's one of the things that's one of the things reason why I guess I never, because I had thought about Filipino wife before, but then my mother, or it was the pastor of mom's church who knew somebody, and they told me these stories, and so I decided that wasn't a good idea, because I didn't really want to have to deal with that level of chaos in my life.
Yeah. Again, marriage, there's pluses and minuses. There's pluses and minuses with being single. It's just, it's like, what choice makes you the happiest? But then it gets all like confused because we have all this propaganda
Mm-hmm.
and we have all this messaging. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah, well, sometimes you just gotta sail your ship by yourself around the world,
Yeah, exactly.
or
And then
drive a car into the sunset. Drive it into the sunset and away from the sunset. Or maybe sometimes you just got to go down to the beach and pretend like you can hold the sun in your hand. Or
there
maybe
you go.
you're hanging like a vine and you're looking at the world from a different point of view, you know?
Like the hangman, yeah.
Or you're sitting between a couple different poles, and you're dressed in purple, and you got a blue hat on, and between the B and the J, and you got the TORA in your hands, or
Yeah.
or you're like a heart and you got a bunch of swords stabbed through it, or you're on a hillside and there's some UFOs beaming their lights into your head, electrifying you.
That would be crazy.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It is getting to be almost 11 o'clock here, and it's like, what, 12 for you?
Midnight.
Midnight.
Yep.
Yeah. And so, like when I did the first of one of these with, when it was, when I was using StreamYard and you were on and we were talking, and now this was the first one of these with the telephone. And I'm hoping that it will have worked out. I won't really know until I go re and review it. And this show is called Talk to Me, and be part of the show and dial 503 902 1176. That's 503 902 1176. And I worked hard at writing that backwards so you could see it, because I think
You
that,
did good, though.
and yeah, and so I'm probably going to try this at earlier times of the day, which I know, like maybe tomorrow, maybe, because I don't heavily have a show scheduled for Saturday. And one of the things that's going to be happening up soon is that I have my easel in the other room, and I'm going to set the easel up, and I'm going to put a large canvas on it, one of the largest canvases I have in my possession, and I'm going to work on doing an ocean scene and I'm gonna go and film the whole process. Uh, uh,
Oh, that would be cool.
and so like I think this is a picture I took in Hawaii. This is not the one I'm. I may go out and I go through my photos and look for the right sunset photo. Probably what I'll start out first is I'm gonna do the underpainting. I'm just gonna do the underpainting. I know that I'm gonna want to have it as a red underpainting. I do know that, and and then I may. I think I have one of those photos here. I know I have a lot of reference photos right in front of me. Um, maybe like this one here. This one, maybe like this one. This one's not a sunset. This is just the middle of the day. But the sunsets are more dynamic, and I'm probably going to do something like this one, where there is some shore, where there's waves, but the waves being, mm, I don't know. I know that it's going to take me. It's going to take me close to a year to do the picture because I haven't done an ocean scene for a long. I think 2018 was the last time I did an ocean scene, and I'm gonna want to get it right because this is a. I think it's a 15 by 30 canvas. It's a birchwood canvas, and um, so I'm gonna do the underpainting. I'll show you layer by layer, and because it's like this, I'm not gonna hurry it up by using a hair dryer on it at all. It's just gonna go slow, and I'll do that, and maybe I'll also show some of in my my revamped talk show thing going on, show you how um, to cook things by texture versus by time and other things because as a creative person and as a cook who is working on trying to pull the wheat out of your life and but you still like things, you still want things like sweets or you want things like crackers, like how do you make this stuff in the microwave, you know and
Yeah, and I want to hear all about your black bean brownies. I want to hear if they were good.
well, some of them were and some of them weren't.
Oh, okay.
And I made some black bean flatbread. I was really trying for crackers because I went and ordered some Vegemite, and I have some, and that was like expensive. It was $16 because it was imported. Because I think the last time I bought it was less, but with the tariffs coming from Australia because they don't make Vegemite on in the Americas at all, and I think it comes from is a product of Australia. But they make Marmite, but I can't handle the taste or the texture of Marmite. And Marmite is more like honey, but the Vegemite's more like paste, and I for some reason I really like the taste of Vegemite. And
Oh, wow. I heard it's nasty.
oh, I guess it is if you're I don't know. For some reason, I like it, and then, but then it's like you want to put. It tastes good best on crackers. Actually, I like it
Uh-huh.
best. I like it best on hardtack. I do have some saltines, but now it's like okay, I got to really work on my blood sugar and getting
Right.
myself in back in alignment into a place where maybe I can handle some some refined carbohydrates. But I think one of the things I'm going to be trying to make is but I don't have an oven. And without an oven, it really hamstrings you for what you can make. And so my birthday's coming up in March, and so I'm thinking about making a bean cake. Like I was like maybe using instead of using because when you using like almond flour, and almond flour just doesn't behave. And if you use like baking soda, not baking powder, baking soda with almond flour, you can get something that comes out of the oven that smells like ammonia.
Ew.
it's like there are chemical reactions that can happen. Almond flour is not a substitute for wheat flour. There are I what I have found because like in 2020 2021 I that was the last time I tried in trying to get my blood sugar under control, and I actually did get my A1C down to like 5.7 for a short time. And then but what happened is and so when I started this 9 on 9 show in September 2022, it was right around that time that my doctor was telling me that my cholesterol was too high because I had changed to a high fat diet where I was like, I think I calculated that I was consuming 80% of my calories from fat. And then I was,
So were you doing like keto?
yeah, I was doing like keto. And then I was also doing, I was eating on a 4 hour window too, like a 4 to 6 hour window. And so when you eat a high fat diet, you can easily fast for 28 hours. It's really easy. You could probably even fast for longer on a high fat. And then you can also, on a high fat diet, you could probably get away with and have plenty of energy on like 1,000 calories a day as well.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and so, but my cholesterol was getting too high, so they told me I needed to go on a low fat diet. Well, I did it. I went on. I did it, and then what happened is I ended up gaining back. I gained back. I went from 165 up to 230 in just a short time,
Oh.
just a very short time. And then over that course, my A1C went from 5.7 up to 6.2, and then I went on the metformin. But then I didn't correct my diet. I just took the pills, and then
Mm.
um, this last year I ate a lot of candy. And I think also in being my mother's caregiver, there was a lot of stresses. There are a lot of stresses, but
Yeah.
and I um, ate a lot of candy, and that is where since summer I pushed my blood sugars up too high, and I got damage on my in my peripheral on my left eye on my retina now,
Oh.
and
That's not good. Have you? Sorry to cut you off though. Have you tried? Because we tried almond flour too, and we didn't like it because it doesn't behave. And we tried all these different flours to substitute, wheat. Uh, the one that works the best is actually from King Arthur flour. It's their
cake flour.
gluten free.
Oh,
Huh?
they're gluten
Yeah,
free.
so King Arthur flour. If you go on their website and you look up gluten free
Mm-hmm.
flour, it's like a mixture. I want to say of like brown rice and like all these different things.
I have some of that,
Check it out. Oh, you do? Okay.
but what I'm finding is that well, what I made tonight. I'm gonna have someone to get off the phone here because I want some Vegemite, and
Mm-hmm.
because I was trying to make crackers, and but what I do is I'm mixing I'm mixing into it vital wheat gluten. So wheat it's wheat protein, and I'm mixing wheat protein into things, and I'm also mixing wheat bran because I adding some wheat into it. So you're just taking wheat bran is mostly just fiber, and so you can get things to. I don't have a wheat sensitivity that I know of, but if you can take some of these organic wheats or whatever, you take that stuff, it actually helps when you're baking with non refined wheat. it makes it so that you can make pancakes that taste like pancakes. Now, one of the things you can do
Okay.
is you what I find is what behaves the best is red lentils and water with a little bit of oil in it. But it tastes like tofu. It has a real
Interesting.
it has a real green taste to it, and it's kind of hard to get over that taste. So how do you make make pancakes that? What I like how it behaves because you can just pour it down on the you cook it on a low heat. You pour it on the griddle, and and then it you make maybe dollar size pancakes or a little bit larger ones, but the dough is like really liquid, and you cook it low and you cook it slow, and then it has a like restaurant pancakes. You know how because restaurant pancakes they 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 are they're like a on a liquid that they just like pour out onto the griddle, and it's whatever, and so they're way more fluid than any pancake recipe that you can ever get, and so a lot of like this kind of cooking is all about understanding temperature and understanding texture, and actually
Mm.
because that's one of the things like I if you it's one of those survive cooking is one of those survival skills, but I think it's
Yeah.
one of those bigger survival skills is learning how to cook without a recipe.
Yeah.
You know, just having an understanding.
Definitely.
Having an understanding of how things work, and then because when you're thinking of like even to be healthy and taking responsibility for yourself is to make your own processed foods at home from
Right.
ingredients. And then if you're trying to lower the cost down, and so like for me, I go to a when I go and get a lot of my materials, I get it out of this health food store in the state capital, and it's a 70-mile round trip drive. But my mom's doctor's in that area. My sister lives in that area, so it's like you go, and then but they have this fantastic bulk section, and you buy the ingredients bulk, and they're way cheaper than if you were to buy them like in a package thing, or buy chia seeds from Bob's Red Mill. You get chia seeds there that are like $3 a pound, but Safeway chia seeds are what are they like? They're you get like 8 ounces for $7 or something like that. Or you gonna go for nutritional yeast, and then
Right.
and then so you end up um, spending way less money by going to high end grocery stores and buying and that have really good bulk sections, and those are just some of those these are just survival skills, things that I have learned through time on how and it's like how do you feed yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I think that
So
will be a good, informative series
yeah,
because eating healthy is really in our society today is really difficult, but it's so important.
but then it's also one of those things to eat healthy. One of the things I learned is that that's actually one of the things that if you have in a household and you have both people working and they're working 60 hours a week, it's almost impossible to eat healthy, especially in
Yeah.
with how expensive things are because of you end up buying lots of things that are already almost partially cooked already. They have some kind of a process that has gone on, or you're making something that's like really super simple because you know, and I mean, I like because I live out in the country. It's like when it comes to buying vegetables, I don't buy vegetables that are really perishable. So like what I have in my refrigerator is I have cabbage and I have carrots, and
Mm.
I do, but my favorite is iceberg lettuce. I do have some iceberg lettuce, but if it's like all those other vegetables, I get them frozen.
Yeah,
And
that's smart.
yeah, because I like, I mean, I was used to buy stuff like that when I was living on my own or living by myself, and the frustrating part was you bought all this spinach, you bought all this stuff, and then when you got around to cooking it, it was rotten.
Yeah, that always happens, especially with spinach.
Yeah, yeah, and so like, well, I just don't buy spinach anymore. Unless it's frozen, I don't buy it, and yeah, it kind of it means that you can't it because it means you can't have it in a salad. That's all it means. It just means,
Right.
and but maybe you shouldn't, with all that E. coli and all that stuff that's out in the environment. Maybe vegetables are safer if you cook them than it is if you have them raw.
Well, I, I used to buy spinach all the time and make myself a spinach salad. Well, eating raw spinach is actually like not that healthy for you. It's better to cook spinach.
Yeah,
And so I'm over here eating spinach because I'm like, oh, it's got iron in it and it's good for you. And, you know, spinach lasts longer than buying iceberg lettuce. I'm like, okay, I'm going to make my salad with spinach.
hmm,
Well, I forgot what the compound is, but it's like spinach really needs to be cooked. It's healthier if you cook it. So I was kind of being counterproductive by
yeah.
eating raw spinach.
It tastes fantastic, but like I say,
It
I
does.
I just eat it.
And yeah, I think you're onto something. I think that a lot of vegetables are meant to be cooked.
Yeah. Well, they
They're
process them.
safer to eat.
Yes, they are safer to eat because you don't really know who's picking your vegetables, and I think most of our food now comes outside of the United States. No matter how hard they're trying to reshore these industries, and I just don't. It's
Yeah.
that's another
All right,
conversation.
Bill.
Thank you.
Well, have a good night,
Yeah.
and I hope the show did good, and I hope it continues doing good.
Well, I'm just starting something new, and it's going to take a while to do something new. And like you say, this is probably done at the wrong time anyway. But this is where I'm trying it in order to try to work the bugs out. It's 11:11 right now here.
Oh, perfect. There you go.
So we're ending it. I'm ending my show at 11:11, and Sarah was with me tonight, calling from. The phone says Arizona, and that's what I'm gonna go it as. She's calling from Arizona. My phone number,
All right, Bill.
yeah, my public phone number, and let me just read that off to you again, is 503 And we're working on getting the bugs out of this situation, so eventually maybe I'll be like my hero, Art Bell, someday. All right, with that, I'm going to say good night and thank you. Thank you very much for my first caller on the show, for Sarah, for this nice long conversation that we've had for 2 hours and 2 minutes. And thank you very much. And we'll see.
Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye. And for all you out there, if you made it this far on the replay, please leave a dog and a cat emoji in the comment section. And again, you too can be part of the show called This Is Talk to Me. Be part of the show by calling 503-902-1176. And we'll be back next week to try this again. And eventually, I will be trying it again at an earlier time of the day. So, good night. Bye bye, and blessings and peace to you. Thank you.